I'll be reading from the Omaha World Herald. From Philadelphia, Hillary Clinton offered herself to the nation Thursday night as a dedicated public servant and tested leader best equipped to face a moment of reckoning and bring Americans together to solve the enduring problems of economic and national security. Clinton acknowledged the continued turmoil in the United States and across the world that has led to fear and anxiety, but she pledged to help Americans recover from the sluggish economy and keep them safe from terroristic threats. America is once again at a moment of reckoning, Clinton told the Democratic Convention as she accepted her nomination. Powerful forces are threatening to pull us apart. Bonds of trust and respect are fraying. And just as with our founders, there are no guarantees. It is truly up to us. We have to decide whether we're going to work together so we can all rise together. People in the crowd waved American flags and chanted Hillary so loud that they, at times, drowned her out. Her husband, former President Bill Clinton, watched from the audience. Promising Americans a steady hand, Clinton cast herself Thursday as a unifier for divided times, an experienced leader steeled for a volatile world. She aggressively challenged Republican Donald Trump's ability to do the same. Imagine him in the Oval Office facing a real crisis, Clinton said as she accepted the Democratic nomination for president. A man you can bait with a tweet is not a man we can trust with nuclear weapons. Clinton had a difficult task: to appeal to left-leaning Democrats, many of whom passionately prefer her rival Bernie Sanders, as well as moderates and independents who are still undecided. Recent national polls show Clinton locked in a tight race with Trump, with many voters finding her unlikable and questioning her and honesty. The race has tightened over the summer and is now a dead heat.
From Simi Valley, California, he's made 18,000 parachute jumps, helped train some of the world's most elite skydivers, done some of the stunts for Ironman 3. But the plunge Luke Aikens knows he'll be remembered for is the one he's making without a parachute or a wingsuit or anything really other than the clothes he'll be wearing when he jumps out of an airplane at 25,000 feet this weekend, attempting to become the first person to land safely on the ground in a net. The Fox network will broadcast the 2-minute jump live at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time Saturday as part of an hour-long TV special called Heaven Sent. And no, you don't have to tell Aikens it sounds crazy. He knows that. He said as much to his wife after a couple Hollywood guys looking to create the all-time greatest reality TV stunt floated the idea by him a couple years ago. I said, "You won't believe these guys," the affable skydiver recalls with a robust laugh. "They want me to jump out without a parachute." She said, "Oh, with a wingsuit?" I said, "No, they want me to do it with nothing." We both had a good laugh about that. But in the weeks that followed, he couldn't shake one persistent thought. Could anybody actually do this and live to tell the tale? Because if anyone could, Aikens wanted to be that guy. After all, the 42-year-old daredevil has practically lived his life in the sky. He made his first tandem jump when he was 12, followed with his first solo leap 4 years later. He's been racking them up at about 800 a year ever since. He took his wife, Monica, on her first jump when they were dating, and now she's up to 2,000. The couple lives with a 4-year-old son, Logan, in Washington, where Aikens' family owns Skydive Kapowsin near Tacoma. Over the years, Aikens has taught skydiving, taught others to teach skydiving, even participated in a world record stacking events. Those exercises where skydivers line up atop one another as they fly their open chutes across the sky. He tells of having his chute tangle with others on a couple of those efforts and having to come down under his reserve parachute. In all, he's used his reserve 30 times, not a bad number for 18,000 jumps. This time, though, he won't have a parachute. If I was nervous, I would be stupid. If I wasn't nervous, I would be stupid, the compact, muscular athlete says with a grin as he sits under a canopy near Saturday's drop zone. We're talking about jumping without a parachute. I take that very seriously. It's not a joke, he adds. Nearby, a pair of huge cranes defines the boundaries where the net in which Aikens expects to land is being erected. It will be about 1/3 the size of a football field and 20 stories high, providing enough space to cushion his fall, he says. without allowing him to bounce out of it. The landing target, which has been described as similar to a fishing trawler net, has been tested repeatedly using dummies. One of those 200-pound dummies didn't bounce out. It crashed right through. That was not a good thing to see, recalled Jimmy Smith, the veteran Hollywood public relations man who, with his partner Bobby Ware, came up with the idea of having someone skydive without a parachute. Chris Talley, who had worked with Akins on other projects and helped train him for this one, recommended the skydiver to the two amusement park entertainment executives. He told them Akins was arguably the only guy not only good enough, but also smart enough and careful enough to survive this. Smith recalled how the three men gazed at each other with a look of foreboding after that dummy crashed through the net. Then they all looked over at Akins. Luke just said, "No biggie, that's why we test." Fox has had little to say about the stunt other than it will be broadcast on a tape delay, as is the case with all its live broadcasts, says network spokesman Les Eisner. It contains a warning not to try this at home. That would seemingly be difficult, as Smith and Ware had to scour a good part of the world from Arizona Indian land to Dubai real estate before they found what everyone agreed was the best place for Akins to land. He'll come down in a dry, dusty, desolate-looking section of an old movie ranch north of Los Angeles, where not that long ago, Shia LaBeouf was battling Transformers. The drop zone, surrounded by rolling hills, presents some challenges, Akins said, noting he'll be constantly fighting shifting winds as he falls at 120 miles per hour. Other skydivers have jumped from planes without parachutes and had someone hand them one in midair, but Akins won't even have that. Why? To me, I'm proving that we can do stuff that we don't think we can do if we approach it in the right way, he answers. I've got 18,000 jumps with a parachute, so why not wear one this time? He muses almost to himself, but I'm trying to show that it can be done.
32 Americans and Russian crew members are safe after a landing gear problem forced an Air Force OC-135B open sky surveillance jet from Offutt Air Force Base to make an unscheduled landing this week in eastern Russia. The jet had taken off from southern Siberia at mid-morning Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Monday in Omaha. Soon after takeoff, the crew realized the landing gear hadn't fully retracted, said Army Lieutenant Colonel Michelle Baldanza, a Pentagon spokeswoman. The crew did not declare an emergency, she said, but crew members ended the photographic mission and flew the plane for more than 3 hours with its landing gear down to Khabarovsk, about 1,200 miles away. The aircraft is safe to fly in a gear-down configuration, Baldanza said, but it cannot fly at the altitudes and airspeeds required by the approved Open Skies mission plan. The Siberian Times newspaper, quoting airport officials, reported that the aircraft was met by emergency vehicles when it landed. The 6 Russians disembarked in Khabarovsk, Baldanza said. They were on board as members of an escort contingent to guide and monitor the Americans while they were in Russian airspace. The plane then flew to Yokota Air Base near Tokyo and is now undergoing maintenance at Kadena Air Base on Okinawa. The crew is expected to return to Offutt once the problem is corrected, Baldanza said. The Open Skies Treaty, signed in 1992, allows the 34 member nations, including the United States, Russia, and most members of NATO, to fly unarmed aerial observation flights over the territories of other members. So far this year, the United States has scheduled 9 flights over Russia, Baldanza said. 3 have been canceled because of a mechanical problem. The 2 OC-135B aircraft that fly the Open Skies missions are based at Offutt and are flown by crews from the 45th Reconnaissance Squadron. They were built in 1961. The plane involved in Tuesday's incident, number 61-2672, recorded at least 4 in-flight mechanical incidents on flights out of Offutt earlier this year, according to records obtained using the Freedom of Information Act. 2 of them involved the landing gear. The Open Skies planes are some of the most antiquated in an aging fleet of 55-wing reconnaissance aircraft, said Robert Hopkins, who flew with the wing in the 1980s and 1990s and has written a book about the aircraft type. Unlike its sister RC-135 aircraft, It still flies with its original 1960s engines and an old-fashioned cockpit setup. They're Stone Age, Hopkins said. What more miracles can the folks at Offutt do to keep these things flying? Offutt flight instructor Brian Humphrey of Papillion, a former commander of the 45th Reconnaissance Squadron, said only the top crews are chosen to fly the open sky missions because of the remote places they must operate from. They're typically the most seasoned, experienced aviators in the squadron, said Humphrey, who himself has flown open skies flights for 11 years in the 1990s and 2000s. When they're in the middle of Russia, halfway around the world, they have to be able to make decisions on their own, he said. He said crews are trained to handle landing gear problems like this one. Such problems are expected on jets in their 6th decade of service. They're exquisitely maintained, Humphrey said, but they're 55 years old. Things do break.
From Orlando, Florida, Daniel Rushing treats himself to a Krispy Kreme donut every other Wednesday. He used to eat them in his car. Not anymore. Not since a pair of Orlando police officers pulled him over, spotted 4 tiny flakes of glaze on his floorboard, and arrested him, saying they were pieces of crystal methamphetamine. The officers did 2 roadside drug tests, and both came back positive for the illegal substance, according to his arrest report. He was handcuffed and arrested, taken to county jail and strip searched, he said. A state crime lab, however, did another test several weeks later and cleared him. It was incredible, he said. It feels scary when you haven't done anything wrong and get arrested. It's just a terrible feeling. Rushing, 64, of Orlando, was arrested at about 1 p.m. December 11 at Robinson Street and Paramore Avenue. He had just dropped off a neighbor at the hospital for a chemotherapy session, something he did every Friday, he said. Then he went to 7-Eleven store to give another friend a ride home, he said. She's elderly, a church friend, and works there. The officer who made the arrest, Corporal Shelley Riggs Hopkins, an 8-year department veteran, had staked out the 7-Eleven because of complaints about drug activity, she wrote in her report. She pulled over Rushing because he failed to come to a full stop before pulling out of the convenience store parking lot, and because he was driving 42 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone, according to her report. When Rushing opened his wallet, she saw that he had a concealed weapons permit, she wrote. He told her that he had a gun, and she asked him to step out of his car, a small Chevy. That's when she spotted a rock-like substance on the floorboard where his feet were, she wrote. I recognized through my 11 years of training and experience as a law enforcement officer the substance to be some sort of narcotic, she wrote.
Former Iowa Governor Tom Vilsack is adding his voice to the chorus of critics who say Donald Trump crossed a line by appearing to ask Russia to investigate his Democratic opponent. He invited a foreign country in which we have an adversarial relationship to inject itself into our politics, Vilsack told the Iowa delegates Thursday morning. Donald Trump sided with Russia and not with us. He is not fit to be president, added Vilsack, who was the surprise guest at the Iowa breakfast. Trump sparked outrage among members of the foreign affairs community and others when he said he hoped Russian intelligence services had hacked Democrat Hillary Clinton's emails and encouraged them to make them public. His remarks came as speculation grew that Russia was behind the recent hacking of emails at the Democratic National Committee. Trump has since said that he was being sarcastic. Vilsack is the current U.S. Secretary of Agriculture. He was considered a possible vice presidential pick for Clinton, but he lost out to U.S. Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. Vilsack graciously noted Thursday that Kaine gave a great speech Wednesday night.
From Pyongyang, North Korea, North Korea's top diplomat for U.S. affairs told the Associated Press on Thursday that Washington crossed the red line and effectively declared war by putting leader Kim Jong-un on its list of sanctioned individuals, and said a vicious showdown could erupt if the U.S. and South Korea hold annual war games as planned next month. Han Song-rul, Director General of the U.S. Affairs Department at the North Foreign Ministry, said in an interview that recent U.S. actions have put the situation on the Korean Peninsula on a war footing. The United States and South Korea regularly conduct joint military exercises south of the demilitarized zone, and Pyongyang typically responds to them with tough talk and threats of retaliation. Han said North Korea believes the nature of the maneuvers has become openly aggressive because they reportedly now include training designed to prepare troops for the invasion of the North's capital and decapitation strikes aimed at killing its top leadership. Han says designating Kim himself for sanctions was the final straw. The Obama administration went so far to have the impotence to challenge the supreme dignity of the DPRK in order to get rid of its unfavorable position during the political and military showdown with the DPRK, Han said, using the acronym for North Korea's official name, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The United States has crossed the red line in our showdown, he said. We regard this thrice cursed crime as a declaration of war. Although North Korea had already been heavily sanctioned internationally for its nuclear weapons and long-range missile development programs, Washington's announcement on July 6th was the first time Kim Jong-un had been personally sanctioned. Less than a week later, Pyongyang cut off its final official means of communication with Washington, known as the New York Channel. Han said Pyongyang had made it clear that everything between the two must now be dealt with under war law. Katina Adams, State Department spokesman for the East Asia and the Pacific, said the U.S. continues to call on North Korea to refrain from actions and rhetoric that further destabilize the region and focus instead on taking concrete steps toward fulfilling its commitments and international obligations. She said the U.S.-South Korea joint military exercises are defense-oriented and have been carried out regularly and openly for roughly 40 years and are designed to maintain stability on the Korean Peninsula.
From Big Sur, California. Firefighters struggled Thursday to get the upper hand on a massive wildfire along Northern California's picturesque Big Sur coastline, where anxious residents awaited word on their homes and popular parks and trails closed at the height of the tourist season. The blaze, spanning 42 square miles, has destroyed 34 homes, forced the evacuation of 350 properties, and put at least 2,000 buildings at risk. A 35-year-old father of two girls also was killed this week when the bulldozer he was operating rolled over on the fire lines. California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection estimated that it will take until the end of August to extinguish the blaze that also led to the rescue of 11 hikers, some of whom authorities are suspected of tending to an illegal marijuana patch of 900 plants. No arrests were made. Every day the fire is gaining ground on us, CAL FIRE Battalion Chief Robert Fish said. The weather and steep and rugged terrain is taking its toll, so we'll make progress, but then the fire is making progress faster than we can keep pace with. Firefighters were working in rugged terrain near Coastal Highway 1 in an area that draws tourists from around the world for the dramatic vistas of ocean and mountains. The famous roadway remained open, but smoke and the threat of flames forced the closure of state parks near Big Sur, a big economic driver for the region. Meanwhile, about a dozen lions, tigers, cougars, and other big cats came home to a sanctuary north of Los Angeles days after they were evacuated in the teeth of an advancing wildfire. 10 to 15 big cats, along with some hyenas and raccoons, returned Wednesday to the wildlife way station in the Sylmar area from another facility, spokesman Jerry Brown said. A crowd of staff members carefully took a large cage holding an orange and black Bengal tiger off a truck and rolled it to a barred enclosure where the feline was released. Martine Colette, the 74-year-old founder of the sanctuary, watched carefully as the cats returned. They were among some 300 wild and exotic animals ranging from snakes to parrots to bears that were taken from the sanctuary last week as authorities urged staffers to leave. The Los Angeles Zoo and an animal sanctuary in San Diego provided some of the cages to transport the creatures. Animal people take care of animal people, Brown said.
It's time now to turn to local and legislative news. For those of interest, Hillary Clinton will appear at Omaha North High School at 4410 North 36th Street on Monday. Doors will open at 2:45 p.m. and the program is scheduled to begin at 4:45. From Lincoln, one Nebraska startup will get a $100,000 boost when AOL co-founder Steve Case brings his Rise of the Rest bus tour to Lincoln this fall. That's probably reason enough for entrepreneurs and city leaders to celebrate landing a coveted bus stop on Case's 5th tour. But there's as much or more to gain from a day-long pep rally of sorts aimed at opening eyes and wallets. What we've learned from places like Silicon Valley is it does take a little fearlessness and a sense of rallying around entrepreneurs, cheering them on to be successful and not sitting on the sidelines, kind of critiquing why they're going to fail, Case said by phone on Wednesday. Case, who is now chairman of venture capital firm Revolution LLC, announced Thursday that he will visit Nebraska on October 3, kicking off Lincoln Startup Week. Other cities on the bus tour will be Denver on October 4, Salt Lake City on October 5, Albuquerque October 6, and Phoenix October 7. While in Lincoln and Omaha, Case will visit with dozens of local startups, accelerators, and incubators, hold public events with local entrepreneurs, investors, elected officials, civic leaders, and others to discuss the local startup ecosystem, and host a $100,000 pitch competition with a panel of all-star judges who decide which companies he will invest in. Interested startups need to apply for a spot in the pitch competition at riseofresh.com. We typically get over 100 applications in a city, and we end up picking 8 to 10, Case said. Even though one ends up winning and I write a personal check for $100,000 to them, everybody on that stage gets more visibility from the community, from the press, and potentially from other investors. So it's a way for companies to kind of break out and get noticed. Case started the Rise of the Rest tours in 2014 to bring attention and money to startup companies in cities outside of California, New York, and Massachusetts. Businesses in those states receive about 75% of U.S. venture capital investments in 2015. Case has invested more than $2 million in startup companies in the 19 cities where the tour has stopped. Lincoln and Omaha and the other cities were chosen for this tour from hundreds of cities that were nominated. We are thrilled for Lincoln to host the Rise of the Rest tour and for the huge impact that this can have on our city and our local entrepreneurs, said Wendy Birdsall, president of the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. We know high growth companies can start and scale anywhere, but we want them to make Lincoln their home and expand there. Having this attention is called third-party validation, she said at a Thursday news conference at Fuse Co-working, shared office space for small businesses in the Haymarket. Steve Case is the ultimate in third-party validation. Mayor Chris Beitler called it an honor to be chosen as a stop on the tour. When you get the attention of Steve Case, you know you are doing something right, Beitler said. In a statement, Beitler said the growth of several startups in Lincoln is proof that we have an outstanding environment for visionary entrepreneurs. The event, he said, is a great opportunity to highlight local innovators and build on Lincoln's growing reputation as a hub of the Silicon Prairie. What some people refer to as flyover country is going to be the epicenter of the next wave of innovation, the mayor said.
Some Omaha civic and religious leaders on Thursday preached peace and togetherness between law enforcement and the community. It is not us against them or black against blue, said the Reverend Tony Sanders Jr., president of the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance. It is us, and it is black and blue. Sanders, Mayor Gene Stothert, and Omaha Police Chief Todd Schmaderer presented a united front at a press conference Thursday morning to highlight the need for cooperation. Sanders of Koinonia and Friends of Christ Church said the partnership between clergy and police continues to grow from the solid foundation created more than a decade ago. But he said an upcoming gathering and forum can help spur new and positive relationships between officers and Omahans. At 6 p.m. August 13th, the Ministerial Alliance will host a back-to-school rally with officers in Fontenelle Park. The goal will be to have fun with youth in a safe environment. On August 27th, panelists from the Omaha Police Department and the community will address police brutality and equality in a forum at noon at Howard Kennedy Elementary School. The event is free and open to the public. Unlike other cities, Stothert said, Omaha has had peaceful Black Lives Matter rallies and widespread support for law enforcement. There are communities around the country that are facing issues of public trust in law enforcement. Omaha is not one of those cities, she said. I'm proud that difficult and uncomfortable conversations can lead to understanding and cooperation. Schmaderer echoed comments he made to the World Herald last week, saying crime can't be easily reduced without a strong relationship with the community. Both the chief and Sanders said they think the discussions can prevent negative backlash against law enforcement or the Black community. To respond only during crisis is to react, Sanders said, but to build upon relationships and develop strategic plans outside of crisis is to be more proactive.
From Lincoln, George Mormon isn't sure he'll be able to top this year's birthday present. Just a month ago, Brian Hart became the first in Nebraska to implant Micra, the world's smallest pacemaker. Mormon was honored to be the first recipient just 2 days after his 87th birthday. Micra is 1/10 the size of a traditional pacemaker, close to the size of a large vitamin. It's designed to treat patients with bradycardia, or those who have a slow or irregular heart rhythm of less than 60 beats per minute. Symptoms can be dizziness, fatigue, shortness of breath, or fainting spells. The Micra pacemaker relieves symptoms by sending electrical impulses to the heart, increasing the heart rate. Dr. Andrew Mirlis, a cardiac electrophysiologist at Brian Hart, was the first physician to place the new device. As someone who has put several thousands of pacemakers in patients, he said he was impressed with the advancements. In my lifetime, I've actually seen the size of pacemakers go from a shopping cart that was pushed in front of the patient because of all the electronics were so big, down to miniaturization, which then was the size of a hockey puck. Next came the silver dollar size, now a little bigger than a bullet. But all pacemakers prior to Micra required what can be a little bit of an inconvenience at times: wires. With traditional pacemakers, wires have to be carefully intertwined through veins and screwed into the heart muscle to allow connection. Because the wires cross valves, infection is a possibility, which then often requires another expense of laser extraction. Those wires are really subjected to heartbeats 80,000 times a day, Mirlis said. Those wires get a little bit of use and curvature that can ultimately lead to those wires wearing out. Between tinier measurements and wireless use with Micra, Mirlis calls it a smaller, less invasive alternative. Unlike previous pacemakers, Micra isn't inserted below the collarbone through incision, leaving a scar and lump. It's placed via a vein in the leg and then passed up into the heart wall, where it's attached by the device's small prongs, eliminating any visibility. We had one stitch in the leg that stayed in overnight, came out the next day, and then really the rest is history, Mirlis said, and it's a good history. Mirlis said there seems to be only one issue so far. Micra isn't made for everyone. Patients who choose Micra choose a battery life that will last 10 years. If your life expectancy isn't going to be 10 years, then maybe that technology should be reserved for somebody that's generally healthy. And I think George is, he said. The other complication that can eliminate a patient is that right now the technology can only pace one chamber. There are conditions where the top part of the heart and the bottom part of the heart don't beat and sync, Mirlis said. This specific indication is really only for patients who have atrial fibrillation. A slow rate for the bottom part of the heart was the case for Mormon, making him a perfect candidate. But what left Mormon and his granddaughter, Brianna Kramer, whom he calls his guiding light after the procedure, was the doctor's ability to adjust the pacemaker's parameters based on Mormon's needs and feelings. It's all done by communicating through a computer that is able to tell Mormon's device, okay, don't let the heart go below 60, Mirlis said. They really fine-tune it to him specifically, which is really nice because he's, I guess, not the normal senior, Kramer said with a laugh. He's normally up and moving. Recovery didn't faze Mormon and his up and moving lifestyle. He was walking around 5 to 6 hours after the implant. With the help of his team at Brian Hart and Leaps in Technology, Mirlis expects Mormon to be just the first of many more Micra patients. I like new technology that I really think is going to help patients, he said. That's one of the reasons I love medicine so much. There's always something new. It's never boring.
Construction workers in Council Bluffs discovered human bones Thursday while moving dirt. The remains are at least 100 years old and will be turned over to the Office of the State Archaeologist at the University of Iowa. The workers were moving dirt at 19th Street and Veterans Memorial Highway near Lake Manawa around 11 a.m. when they discovered the bones, according to the Council Bluffs Police Department. Police officers and crime scene investigators worked with the Potawatomi County and State of Iowa Medical Examiner's Office to determine the bones were ancient remains, or at least a century old. Last week's heat and humidity have depleted the Salvation Army's supply of fans. Fortunately, the Salvation Army is set to receive 404 box fans next week from Westlake Ace Hardware. Westlake recently organized a fan drive, officials said, and Omaha area customers donated enough money to buy 404 new fans. The shipment is to arrive at 9 a.m. Monday at the Westlake Hardware at 8425 West Center Road. The box fans are to be reloaded onto a Salvation Army vehicle for distribution to the needy. The State Farm Marshal's office is warning the public about prank phone calls that, in at least one instance, have had costly consequences. In several Nebraska communities, individuals have phoned restaurants and hotels advising actions involving the fire safety systems. In one instance, the caller asked a restaurant employee to pull the fire alarm to reset it. In doing so, the employee unwittingly activated the kitchen hood extinguisher, which caused enough damage to disrupt business. Nebraska State Fire Marshal Jim Hine said his inspection staff wear uniforms, drive in marked cars, and carry credentials. If you have questions, ask for identification or call the State Fire Marshal's office at 402-471-2027. Nebraska's fourth Zika virus case this year was reported Thursday by the state health department. The patient, a woman in her 30s from Lancaster County, didn't have to be hospitalized. She had recently traveled to a Zika-affected country, the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services said. Iowa has had 9 cases to date, all travel-related. The Zika virus, which is carried by 2 kinds of mosquitoes, has been prevalent in some Southeast Asian, South American, Latin American, and Caribbean nations. Most people aren't sickened by the virus, but there have been reports of microcephaly, a serious birth defect, and other severe health consequences. The Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommend that pregnant women not travel to any area where the Zika virus is spreading.
Lincoln will save more than $570,000 through an arrangement with the state to share emergency radio system assets. The city will operate its new 911 radio system using the state computer core and will be able to use the statewide radio system for communication, which will be particularly helpful in rural parts of the county, said Tom Cassidy, the city's public safety director. In return, the state will be able to use the city's new radio system, which offers better communication service inside the urban area. This is a straight across exchange, Cassidy said. No money will change hands, he said during a meeting of the Emergency Radio Oversight Committee this week. The agreement, not yet signed, is simple, Cassidy said. It says we are going to work together, we are going to share our stuff, and each of us will take care of our own infrastructure. He told the group overseeing spending of a 1/4-cent sales tax hike for a new emergency radio system and fire stations. The city's ability to use the state computer core will save some money now and more down the road, since the city will not have to buy the core or pay for maintenance in 5 to 10 years, he said. The city is also looking at locations and designs for the 3 fire stations and a co-located police fire station to be built with revenue from the 1/4-cent sales tax. The cost of the radio system provided by Motorola is much less than estimates, but it looks like the fire stations may cost more than estimated. The city will likely have to buy commercially zoned land rather than residential land, and commercial land generally costs twice as much. Oversight Committee members were told. In addition, Cassidy said, construction costs are going through the roof. Staff are now estimating construction costs for the stations at $250 a square foot. We had expected more like $180 per square foot, he said. The city will be saving money by using the design for a new Air Park fire station being built at Northwest 48 and West Adams Streets for all three new stations. The city had to move its Air Park fire station when the airport authority decided it needed the building. Despite the added cost, Cassidy said he still expects the city will finish all the quarter-cent projects under budget. Nothing would make me happier than to bring both radio and fire stations in under budget and to end the sales tax a couple of months early. And that is our goal, he said. The committee also got an update on finding land for the four stations. In the north, the city is getting close to buying land near 19th and Superior Streets, said Assistant Fire Chief Pat Bohr. The city is also looking at several sites near 86th Street and Layton Avenue, which is close to the ideal 84th and Holdridge Street locations, he said. Staff are looking at land near 70th Street and Pine Lake Road now, zoned commercial, and at land southwest and southeast corners of 84th and Pioneers. City voters approved a 3-year quarter-cent hike in the city sales tax to pay for the stations and radio system. The revenue has been coming in as expected at about $1 million a month, Cassidy said.
The Missouri River Bridge that links Decatur, Nebraska and Ottawa, Iowa is due for $7.7 million worth of work, of maintenance work. The project should add another 20 to 30 years to the lifespan of the 60-year-old structure, according to Kevin Domagala, the Northeast District Road Engineers with the Nebraska Department of Roads. We can still get some good life out of the bridge. It's cost effective to get as much life out of it as we can, Domagala said. The Roads Department will hold an informational meeting August 9th from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Decatur Village office to explain the project. Domagala said the project will begin in the spring and include repainting the bridge, replacing guardrails, and repairing the substructure. Closing the bridge for a month will be necessary, but the exact dates haven't been worked out yet. Domagala said it would possibly be in August or September of 2017. We've got a number of local events that we're trying to avoid, as well as the spring planting and fall harvest seasons, he said. The bridge, which opened in 1956, is a Northeast Nebraska landmark and is known as the Dry Land Bridge because it was built over dry land after the Missouri River channel was diverted. Because of a lack of funds, the re-diverting of the river channel beneath the bridge was delayed for several years, spawning jokes about a brand new bridge that led nowhere. The Decatur Bridge was owned by a local bridge commission, which had charged a toll to raise money for construction and maintenance of the structure. In 2013, facing an expensive repair bill, the commission turned over the bridge to the states of Nebraska and Iowa, and the tolls ended. Both states will share in the cost of the bridge repairs.
With a new school year just weeks away, the Center for People in Need will hold its annual Tools for Education and Teen Day events to help all students go back to school with the needed supplies. We have heard from both educators and parents that being well prepared is so connected to the success of children in school, said Beatty Brosh, Executive Director of the Center for People in Need. It is so helpful for children to both have the materials they need to do their schoolwork and to feel like they can take a sense of pride in their education. The Tools for Education event will provide kindergarten through 12th grade students with new backpacks and school supplies. The event takes place at the Center, 3901 North 27th Street, Unit 1, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Saturday and from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday. The Teen Day event invites girls in 6th through 12th grade to shop free for new clothes and accessories for the start of the school year. The event takes place at the Center from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. August 6th and from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. August 8th. The supplies for both events are made possible through local businesses and individual donations. Both events are open to low-income families who are under 150% of the federal poverty guidelines. Those who are not currently Center for People in Need clients can fill out a short application to qualify. Volunteers are needed to staff these events. To volunteer or learn more, go to centerforpeopleinnneed.org.
From Des Moines, the former city clerk for the city of Neola has been charged with 3 felonies and other charges after a state audit last year found that more than $230,000 was misspent over a 5-year period. Neola officials fired Deb Schreierbrock in August 2013 after a city check written to pay for a fire truck bounced. State auditors found improper overtime payments and numerous checks written to Schreierbrock, among other problems. The Iowa Department of Public Safety said the Pottawatomie County attorney filed the charges Wednesday after state agents investigated. Schreierbrock is charged with ongoing criminal conduct, felonious misconduct, and non-felonious misconduct. She was released on a promise to appear in court on August 19th. The University of Nebraska-Lincoln has a new voice. Teresa Paulson, 50, was named the school's Chief Communication and Marketing Officer, according to a Thursday press release from the university. Paulson succeeds Megan Lauerman, who directed the school's public relations and communication efforts for 15 years. A former vice president for communication and external relations at ConAgra, Paulson will lead the Office of University Communications, the school's central public voice, according to the release. Her annual compensation will be $225,000. Paulson, who lives in Omaha, earned a bachelor's degree in journalism from UNL and a master's degree in communication from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. We are delighted to have her at the helm of our communication enterprise, Chancellor Ronnie Green said in the release. UNL's brand is in great hands. And finally, from Grand Island, a new president has been selected for Central Community College's Grand Island campus. Marcy Chemnitz has been Dean of Instruction for the entire college's health sciences offerings since February 2009. Pending her approval by the College District Board next month, Chemnitz will succeed Thomas Walker. Walker left to become president of Wayne Community College in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Before joining Central Community College, Chemnitz was an assistant professor in the Sanford School of Medicine at the University of South Dakota. She holds a doctorate and master's degree from the University of South Dakota.
It's time now to turn to the obituaries in our respective papers from the Lincoln Journal-Star. Peg Baranek of Lincoln passed away July 12th. There is no age listed. A celebration of Peg's life will be held at 11 a.m. on Saturday, July 30. First Plymouth Congregational Church in Lincoln. Memorials to the Ark of Lincoln. Tritton, Ronald L. Tritton of Tecumseh, age 80. No other information is listed. Clare, Donald R. Clare, 91 of Lincoln, passed away July 26th. Veteran, memorial service 4 p.m. Saturday, July 30th at Kingdom Hall in Lincoln. Crosby, Levon K. Crosby, age 92, passed away on July 27th. There is no other information listed. Ager, Gerald R. Ager, 97, a veteran. Funeral services at 10 a.m. July 30 at Douglas United Methodist Church. Memorials to Douglas United Methodist Church and Nash Jensen Post 195 of the American Legion of Palmyra. Military graveside honors will be conducted by Nash Jensen Post 195 of the American Legion of Palmyra. Zink Fox Funeral Home is in charge of the arrangements. They are in Sterling. Greaves, George A. Greaves, age 61 of Lincoln, died July 23rd, was born in Broken Bow. The funeral service will be held at 10 a.m. on Saturday, July 30 at Bootheris, Mazer and Love in Lincoln. They are also handling the arrangements. Robert Gira, that's spelled G-Y-H-R-A, 79 years old, passed away on July 28th. There is no other information listed. Harpster, Harold Harpster, age 93, died July 11th. Graveside services, 10:30 a.m. Friday, July 29 at Lincoln Memorial Park. Meet at Gate 2. Memorials to Grand Lodge Foundation in Lincoln or Hospice Community Care of Nebraska in Lincoln. Arrangements are being made through Bootheris, Mazer and Love Funeral Home in Lincoln. Heinke Irene Kasbaum-Heinke, 90, of Syracuse, died July 25 in the Syracuse Good Samaritan Society. Memorial services are at 2 p.m. Monday, August 1 at the Green Room, 5th and Main in Syracuse. Burial is at 1 p.m. at Park Hill Cemetery. In lieu of flowers, memorials are suggested to the Syracuse United Methodist Church Building Fund. Arrangements are through Fusselman Allen Harvey Funeral Home in Syracuse. Heatbrink, Russell A. Heatbrink, age 77. That's spelled Hietbrink. Again, 77 years old, a veteran, passed away on July 26, retired from the U.S. Navy. He served 4 tours in Vietnam, assisting in many helicopter rescue missions. Roper and Sons Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. Graveside service, 10:30 a.m. Saturday, July 30 at Lincoln Memorial Park. Memorial contributions can be made to the Capital Humane Society. Hopkins, Sarah L. Lintz Hopkins, 50, of Lincoln, passed away on July 26th. Services will be 11 a.m. Saturday, July 30 at Redeemer Lutheran Church in Lincoln. Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Redeemer Lutheran or their Redeemer Lutheran Good Samaritan Fund or the Lincoln Pregnancy Center. Johnson, June Grace Johnson, age 77, of Lincoln, 80 years old, passed away July 25th. There is no other information listed. Johnson, K. Edward Johnson, 83, of Lincoln, passed away July 27. Funeral arrangements are pending through Butheris Mazer and Love Funeral Home. Johnson, Harland H. Johnson, 82, of Lincoln, passed away July 25, was born in Cortland, Kansas. Memorial service, 2 p.m. Saturday, August 6th at the Bethany Christian Church in Lincoln. Memorials in lieu of flowers to Bethany Christian Church, Nebraska Sports Council, the Cornhusker games, or YMCA Camp Kitaki. There will be no visitation. Roper and Sons is handling the arrangements. Jones, Buford W. Jones, age 88, was born December 27 in Winter, South Dakota, died July 26. Memorial service 10:30 a.m. Saturday, July 30, First Plymouth Congregational Church. Memorials to First Plymouth Congregational Church. Roper and Sons is handling the arrangement. Kaiser, Dorothy Ann Kaiser, age 82, died July 25th. A memorial service is planned for 11 a.m. Monday, August 1 at First Plymouth Congregational Church in Lincoln. Memorials to Net Foundation. AspenAftercare.com looks like that's who's handling the arrangements. Kaufman, Frederick H. Kaufman, died July 27th. Celebration of Life service, 11 a.m. August 2 at Lincoln Berean Church in Lincoln. It's at the chapel on the north entrance. Private burial preceding the service. Memorials to City Impact in Lincoln. Keeney, Nikki G. Keeney, 34, of Lincoln. That's spelled Keeny, passed away on July 26. Memorials in care of the family to be designated later in Nikki's name. Service 10 a.m. Tuesday, August 2 at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. Lotman, Larry G. Lotman, age 69, of Wymore, passed away July 25th, a veteran of the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War. Funeral, 10:30 a.m. Friday at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Wymore. Laughlin Hovitt Funeral Home in Wymore is handling the arrangements. Miller, Glenn A. Miller, of Crete, passed away July 25. There's no other information available. Navratil, April Rose Navratil, passed away July 26th. Services will be 3 p.m. Saturday, July 30 at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. In lieu of flowers, memorials to the family to be designated at a later time. Lincoln Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. It appears from this listing that she is a veteran. Nolly, Jerry L. Nolly, age 77, of Lincoln, a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, passed away July 26th. Funeral service 10 a.m. Saturday, July 30 at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. Memorials to Tabitha Foundation Hospice or American Cancer Society. Party, Willard Party Philly passed away on July 27, 83 years old. No other information is available. Pearson, Velma M. Pearson, age 90 of Bennett. Memorial service 11 a.m. Monday, August 1 at Trinity Lutheran Church in Walton. Memorial gathering 2 to 4 p.m. Sunday, July 31 at Metcalf Funeral Home in Lincoln. Pojar, Joseph H. Pojar, 76 of Davie, formerly of Lincoln, passed away July 7. Services 11 a.m. July 30 at First Evangelical Covenant Church in Lincoln. No funeral home is listed. Prochaska, Glenn H. Gunner Prochaska, age 92 of Crete, passed away July 27. Celebration of life will be held at 2 p.m. on Saturday, July 30 at Kunkel Funeral Home in Crete. Memorials care of the family for future designation. Pyle, Dorothy May Hardenbrook Pyle, age 90 of Wymore, funeral 11 a.m. Monday, August 1 at Wymore Church of Christ. There is no other information available. Schmore, Larry D. Schmore, 73 of Lincoln, a vet from the U.S. Air National Guard. Funeral service 10 a.m. Saturday at the Second Baptist Church in Lincoln. Memorials to the family for future designation. Roper and Sons is handling the arrangement. Shaw, James McEachgren Shaw, age 77. No other information is available. Stearns, Priscilla Stearns, 92 of Lincoln. There has already been a graveside service. There will be a memorial service at 11 a.m. Monday at the First United Methodist Church in Lincoln. Memorials to Simons Saltillo Cemetery in Roca, Nebraska. Roper and Sons is handling the arrangements. And my final listing is Waters, Fern E. Waters of Geneva, passed away July 26th at the age of 95, and there is no other information available.
These are the obituary and funeral arrangements from the Omaha World Herald. Axiotis, Petros A. Axiotis, 97. Services Saturday, 9 a.m. at St. John's Greek Orthodox Church. Memorials to St. John's Greek Orthodox Church or Omaha Police Department. Barger, Natalie Ann Barger, 60. Memorial service will be held on Sunday, July 31st at 2 p.m. at Trinity Episcopal Cathedral. Memorials will be dedicated to a future garden in Natalie's memory. Berghagen, Catherine Fern Bernhagen, age 104 of Omaha. Funeral Saturday, 10 a.m. at Bethany Lutheran Church. Memorials to Bethany or Streams of Life. Cable, Lori A. Cable, 59. Services Saturday, 10:30 a.m. at St. Wenceslas Catholic Church. In lieu of flowers, please consider looking at the Lori Cable Family Fund. Cernick, Elaine R. Cernick, 92. Massive Christian burial Monday, 10:30 a.m. at St. Gerald Catholic Church. Family suggests memorials to St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance in Phoenix, Arizona. Clark, Bill R. Clark, age 87. He was a veteran. Memorial service Saturday, 11 a.m. at the funeral home. That's Reichmuth Funeral Home. Memorials to Our Savior's Baptist Church. Dean, Gary D. Dino Dean, 75. Celebration of Life, 6 p.m., Bethany Funeral Home Chapel, Friday. Hahn, Luella A. Hahn, 91. Massive Christian burial Friday, 10:30 a.m. at St. Patrick Catholic Church in Elkhorn. Handy, Madeline Taylor Handy, 93. Services 10 a.m. Saturday, July 30th at Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Memorials to the family. Johnson, Raj Lee Johnson. There's no age. Private memorial Saturday, July 30th at 12 p.m. Kelly, Terry W. Kelly, 56. There's a cremation with no services. LaFawn, Kenneth A. LaFawn, 81, born in Minnetonka, Nebraska. Memorial service at 11 a.m., all at Faith Christian Church. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Child Saving Institute or Faith Christian Church. Lammers, Noel G. Lammers, 75. He was a veteran. Celebration of Noel's life, 10:30 a.m. Monday, August 1st, 2016 at Emmanuel Fellowship Church. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Assure Women's Center in Omaha. Larkin, Susan Claire Larkin, 58. Celebration of Life, 10 a.m. Friday, July 29th at Lifegate Church in Omaha. Luritzen, Gilbert Wayne Luritzen, 83 of Dannenbrog. Memorial service will be held at 7 p.m. Friday, August 12th at Jacobson Greenway Funeral Home in St. Paul. Lohmeyer, Danny R. Lohmeyer, 69. Mass of Christian Burial, 10:30 a.m. Tuesday at St. James Catholic Church. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be directed to St. Vincent de Paul Society of St. James in Dan's name. Majoras, Bernita M. Majoras, 83. Funeral services Monday, August 1st at 10 a.m. St. James Catholic Church. Manchester, K. Manchester, 91. Celebration of Grandy's life, 1 p.m. Friday at the Pacific Street Chapel. Memorials may be directed to the Josie Harper Hospice House or Shriners Hospital for Children. McIntosh, Jason M. McIntosh, 33. He was a veteran. Funeral service Monday, August 1st at 11 a.m. at Bellevue Memorial Chapel. Internment at Bellevue Cemetery. Military honors by American Legion Post 331. Memorials, Ambassador Bible Church. Mickelson, Harold E. Mickelson, age 68. Celebration of life at 11 a.m. at King of Kings Church. Memorials will be directed by the family. Malika, Tindaro Tim Malika, 77. Graveside service 2 p.m. Friday, July 29th at the West Lawn Hillcrest Memorial Park. Memorials to be directed by the family. Moore, Lorraine M. Moore, 86. A complete notice will follow later. Panting, Ronald B. Panting. He was a lieutenant colonel, United States Air Force, retired veteran. A complete notice will follow later. He was 61. Philbrick, James Wilton. Philbrick, 81. He also was a veteran. A funeral mass will be held Monday, 10 a.m., Holy Ghost Catholic Church. A complete notice will follow later. Ruprecht, Carolyn D. Ruprecht, 76. Memorial service Friday, July 29th at St. Robert Bellarmine Church in Omaha. Visitation is 6:30 and wake service 7 p.m. In lieu of flowers, family requests memorials in her honor to Nebraska Alzheimer's Association in Omaha. Sandberg, Catherine A. Sandberg, 83. Complete notice will follow later. Schlesinger, Louise B. Schlesinger. It's spelled Schlissiger. Louise was 90. A funeral service Saturday, 10 a.m. at Roeder Mortuary. Memorials to Nebraska Humane Society. Sheldon Coloan, Marianne A. Sheldon Coloan, 96. Celebration of Marianne's life, Saturday, July 30th at 10 a.m. at Raymond Mortuary, Southwest Chapel. Memorials may be given to Benson Baptist Church. Sims, Arnold E. Sims. He was a veteran, and his age was 89. 89. A memorial service Saturday, July 30th at the Kramer Funeral Home. Smalley, Smallis, John Smallis, Smailys, 78. He was a veteran. Funeral service at noon at the Bethany Funeral Home Chapel. Taylor, Robbie S. Rob Taylor, 46. Funeral service 11 a.m. Monday at Fremont Alliance Church in Fremont. Memorials to Rob Taylor Children's Educational Fund at Bank of the West in Fremont. Thomas, Anthony Thomas, 58. Funeral service 9 a.m. Saturday at Mortuary Internment, Thomas Funeral Home. Trawick, Francis W. Trawick, 90. Celebration of Life, Saturday, July 30th, Minor Liberty United Methodist Church in Plattsmouth. Memorials to Minor Liberty United Methodist Church in Plattsmouth. Webster, Esther Webster, 93. Service to begin at 2 p.m. Friday, July 29th at the Good Shepherd Funeral Home. Welton, Rosemary Billy Welton, 71. Memorial service 10 a.m. Saturday, July 30th at St. Cecilia's Cathedral. Memorials to St. Cecilia's Grade School. And finally, Youngblood, Annette C. Youngblood, 74. Memorial service Friday, July 29th, 7 p.m. at the Bremen Mortuary, 72nd Street Chapel.
Listeners, memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska 68152. Thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter. And Beverly and I will be right back after a short break with the editorials, today's living entertainment, business markets, and sports.
And Beverly Lighting. Okay, Bob and Beverly, this break is pre-recorded. Runs about 2 minutes, 40 seconds. Right? Yeah, you're one of the problems, and I should. We're not repeating. I gotta check and see what we're not repeating the newspapers properly. It's not being recorded at all on this computer. So the other set recording there, and that's a different sound card system. That's probably like I gotta check it. And so what I told you to do, and I worked on the promotional, is offset the play welcoming clothing to I have a promotional announcement right now when I'm here at the Benson Street Fair, and we will be out there all day tomorrow, Saturday, from morning until about 4 o'clock p.m. in the afternoon, and Pelican will be there with her team, several people living out there. Anyway, we'll be making some recordings of the interview and hopefully maybe trying to describe the parade as we can at the Benson Street Days. And that program, if it comes to fruition, should will be aired at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow night. I'd say, well, what happens to the movie? The movie will be aired at 30. It'll be Saturday night, it'll be tomorrow night. It has a good dinosaur that will air at 4. And when the newspapers repeat, it's normal for the newspapers will not be repeated tomorrow. Instead, at 4:30, after we have radio, you will hear a good dinosaur. She's going to go last, of course. This is brought to us by Pelican. And as soon as the movie is over, at around probably after 6 p.m., and we will play the recorded show that we will produce from the Benson Network. You're listening to the Radio Talking Book Network in Nebraska. Which returned to our ears in the studio for the second hour reading from the Omaha World Herald and the Lincoln Journal-Star. Here once again, Mike Gunning, and by Lighting. Go ahead.
Thank you, Paul, and welcome back, listeners. We'll start off with the editorials from the Lincoln Journal-Star entitled City Hall Should Focus on the Long Term. There's something about partisan political competition that seems to lead elected officials to think in the short term. The trend can be detected in maneuvering over the city budget as the 4-member Republican majority jockeys with the administration led by Mayor Chris Beitler, a Democrat. Budget cuts proposed by the Republicans would in some instances allow long-term problems to grow bigger, but the administration and Council Democrats are not immune to the temptation either. Consider 3 examples. Snow removal. Paying for snow removal with street construction funds has the potential to cut into the amount of money available to keep city streets in good repair and for new street projects. Reporter Nancy Hicks delved into the historical record of how the city has paid for snow removal in the past in a story in Monday's Journal-Star. In recent years, the city has been paying for snow removal from the general fund, consisting mostly of revenue from sales and property taxes. Mayor Chris Beitler wants to move $1.85 million worth of snow removal costs from the general fund to the street fund. Council member Larian Gaylor Bard, a Democrat, wants to move money and even more to avoid a property tax hike. Water and sewer rates. The Republicans on the council are considering cutting back the 5% hike proposed by the administration to 3%. No one likes to pay more for the water and sewer bills, of course, but the administration's proposal is hardly extravagant. The administration wants to replace water mains more quickly than is currently possible. But sheesh, even with the proposed increase, most water mains would be replaced only every 150 years, according to city staff. And remember, the water and sewer fees can't be diverted to other uses. Emerald ash borer. The ash tree killing insect has been found only about 30 miles away in Ashland. Some tree experts think the bugs may already be munching away undetected beneath the bark of trees in Lincoln. Yet the Republicans want to cut back on the money allotted in the proposed budget for tree removal and slowing the bugs' advance in the capital city. This follows up on their vote to strip funding to fight the bug from the storm water bond issue approved by both voters earlier this year. As voters are reminded, when they look at their ballots for city offices, Lincoln has a nonpartisan municipal government. Now it's threatened by serious infection of partisan politics. One indication of whether the infection has the upper hand is whether City Hall makes decisions that are in the public's long-term interest.
Here's some letters from the readers of the Omaha World Herald, printed in the Public Pulse. The first one is from Stephanie Feldstein of Tucson, Arizona, Population and Sustainability Director of the Center for Biological Diversity. Regarding the July 25th editorial, beef debate needs realism. Though advancements in more sustainable farming techniques are necessary and noteworthy, the fact remains that meat and our unhealthy appetite for it are bad news for the planet. The very problems caused by beef production, from emissions that contribute to climate change to water contamination and pollution, are the issues threatening our farms with severe droughts, deadly storms, and record-setting temperatures. Just because something is hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, especially when the planet is at stake. Perhaps we can't completely change meat production overnight, but we can start by acknowledging the reality of the situation. If everyone on Earth ate the way Americans eat, we'd need 4 more planets to sustain us. Mitigation alone can't make the average American diet sustainable, and studies have shown that simply cutting back on meat can have a greater impact than driving a fuel-efficient car or eating an entirely local diet. It's time to accept that we need to re-examine what's on our plates. This letter is from James P. Laxo of Omaha. If it weren't for the lack of people with long hair with flowers in it, wearing beads and wild clothes, I would have thought that I was watching a love-in happening in Philadelphia on Tuesday night. It was so uplifting, almost spiritual, like going to an old-time revival in the South. One thing for sure, there is no doubt that Bill Clinton loves his wife, Hillary. But much more than that, he respects and admires her passion, her fire, her unquenchable desire to help others, and her grit to get up every time she stumbles or is knocked down by those who oppose her attempts to make this world a better place for the many she has helped over her years of public service. I have enjoyed the rest of this celebration. It is such a stark change from the gloom, doom, hate, and division of the other show last week. And here's a letter from Roger Hansen of Minden, Nebraska. Your July 27th headline regarding Bill Clinton's speech at the Democratic Convention in the spring of 1971, I Met a Girl, made me chuckle and got me to thinking. He could also reminisce, in 1984, I met a girl. In 1989, I met a girl. In 1991, I met a girl, and so on. Michael Lovejoy from Omaha writes, why in the world would 13 major media networks cover the Republican and Democratic national conventions live? What a waste of time and effort, just so these 13 networks can comment on the lies from both campaigns. You would think they could get together and have 1 or 2 networks cover this, like they do the Olympics. From Judy Alderman comes this letter. In John Ewing's July 21st Public Pulse letter, he wrote that he would write in Bernie Sanders on my ballot in November. I just hope millions of Americans follow my example and do the same. I hope they don't. If very many people do as Ewing suggests, it will split the Democratic vote and almost surely hand the presidency to Donald Trump. Is it more important for Ewing and others like him to send a message than to do whatever they can to keep Trump out of the White House? Supporters of Sanders would be well advised to follow the lead of their candidate, who now supports Hillary Clinton and is asking others who were in his camp to do the same. Sanders had made it clear that the most important thing at this point is to elect a Democratic president and Congress. There are more points of agreement between Clinton and Sanders than differences, and there are certainly ways in which Bernie's agenda can move forward under Hillary. But all of his ideas will be completely dead if Trump gets elected. Think about it. And this last letter is from Lawrence S. Albert, Omaha member of the Veterans Advisory Group. The Omaha Veterans Advisory Group is a committee composed of veterans who volunteer their time and efforts to help provide the best possible care to all those seeking services at the VA Medical Center. It recently came to the committee's attention that there was a serious need for powered wheelchairs to assist significantly handicapped patients during hospital visits. Unfortunately, there was no funding available to provide this needed aid. Aware of Hy-Vee's frequent attention to the welfare of our community, the committee requested that the company consider donating 1 or more of these specialized units. Within a very short time, Hy-Vee made the purchase of 3 powered wheelchairs possible. We on the committee want to express our sincere thanks to Hy-Vee on behalf of the VA Medical Center and the many veterans who will now enjoy the safety and ease of using this means of transport moving about the hospital.
There is only one letter to the editor in the Lincoln Journal-Star today, and it's from Anita Krause of Lincoln. I just saw a night of Republican convention. I thought I would enlighten a few Republicans since they don't seem to know what country they are living in. This is America, and it is not bankrupt, jobless, or any of the things Donald Trump says. Barack Obama has a 56% approval rating. He took us out of the bankruptcy caused by the Bush administration, established 13 million new jobs in 8 years, and saved hundreds of our soldiers' lives by not sending them into a senseless Republican 14-year war. Most of the people won't know what a megalomaniac is, so let me enlighten you. I lived during the Hitler era, so it was a common term. The dictionary describes megalomania as a mental disorder characterized by delusions of grandeur, wealth, and power. Megalomaniacs have a passion for doing big things and a tendency to exaggerate. Welcome to the latest megalomaniac, Donald Trump. We know what Hitler did, and he conned millions of people saying he would bring Germany to glory. The brainwashed people stood by while he killed 6 million Jews. Trump can't do anything he promises except bring our nation down into ruin. He's already threatened to drop atomic bombs on Syria and give many other countries the bombs so they can protect themselves, and we don't have to spend any more money from our treasury. Trump lives to glorify himself. He spoke for more than an hour last Friday after the convention, all about how Ted Cruz wouldn't support him. It was just another childish tirade for his hurt feelings. He even said Cruz probably ruined his own public life because he wouldn't support the Donald. What a disgusting mess.
And here's an opinion from the editorial staff of the World Herald. Each year, about 26,000 young people in foster care nationwide turn 19 and age out of the system. The annual figure in Nebraska is about 300, in Iowa about 600. Trying to move into independence is a daunting challenge for most of these young adults. Many fail to make the transition successfully, with negative consequences for those men and women as well as for society. A 2011 study by the University of Chicago reported that without assistance for the transition, only 42% of former foster youths on average finish high school by age 21. By age 26, only 48% on average have jobs. Providing transitional support can yield important benefits, researchers found. Young men and women who received such help were twice as likely to pursue educational opportunities after high school. The chance of involvement with the criminal justice system were considerably lessened. Nebraska and Iowa have been among the growing number of states taking significant steps to help foster youths make a successful transition. In 2014, the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services launched a program called Bridge to Independence, providing counseling and a stipend for housing and other needs. To stay in the program, the young adults must be in school or working. The Omaha Home for Boys focuses on this need through a program called Branching Out Independent Living. Participants also have access to Youth Mart, in which several local organizations provide youths with necessities such as clothes and furniture. The World Herald's Maggie O'Brien this week reported on how a mentoring apprenticeship program through the Bike Union Bike Shop and Coffee House in Omaha is making a positive change for youths making this transition. Although the challenge for these young people is a difficult one with setbacks in some cases, the overall progress is inspiring. O'Brien reported how 21-year-old Bree Walker had found enormous value in the work opportunities and life skills support she had found at the Bike Union. The experience has helped her raise the level of her academic performance as a student at Metro Community College. Foundations, including the Sherwood Foundation, and corporate and private donors provide most of the funding for the mentoring program, with revenues from the bike store to provide increased support in the future, says Mia Summer, the program's executive director. Brenda Wires with the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation aptly described the need for such efforts when she told O'Brien, "How hard must it be to be 19 and have no connections at all?" Exactly, which is why the commendable hard work of these young people and the support from these organizations deserves such praise.
The following is an editorial from in the Lincoln Journal-Star, and it was written by Mike Lucas, who is the superintendent of York Public Schools. It is a sad fact of these times that if a myth is repeated often enough, it will become a truth. That is the case with a myth that some special interests in Nebraska are trying to perpetuate. The myth is that spending by Nebraska public schools is the main culprit behind disproportionately high property taxes. Here is another sad fact. Blaming public schools for high property taxes allows these institutes, agencies, and policymakers the opportunity to push other parts of their onerous political agenda as well. A look at the numbers here in York allows us to dispel the myth rather easily. The general fund spending by York Public School increased just 12.9% from the 2008-9 school year and the 2015-16 school year. That's an average annual increase of just 1.8%. Yet the general fund property taxes for our district collected increased 54.4% during the same period. Meanwhile, our total general fund revenue increased just 14.3% during those same 8 school years, for an average annual increase of just 2%. Here's the kicker. State aid has been a wild ride for the York Public Schools. It hit $3,714,809 in 2009-10 and will continue its downward trend and plummet to $572,781 in 2016-17. Do you suppose the drastic cut in state aid the past few years, a loss of more than $3.2 million at this point, has anything to do with our over-reliance on local property taxes? The answer is yes. Despite the 1.8% annual increase in general fund spending over the past 8 years, our property tax collections have averaged an annual increase of 7.7%. Here's the crux of the problem. Policymakers shorting the state aid formula enable high property taxes. In 1998-99, K through 12 public education accounted for 32% of the state's general fund budget. Today, that percentage has plummeted to 27.4%. If K-12 education received the same percentage of the state budget today that it used to, the state aid formula would have another $190 million injected into local school budgets each year via state aid. Lawmakers have tweaked the state aid formula at least a dozen times in the past 20 or so years. In most cases, the tweak came about to minimize the allocation to K through 12 education so that the state could balance its budget and force schools to request more local property taxes. In other words, rather than look at the needs of the public schools as determined by the formula, lawmakers determined how much they wanted to spend and then adjusted the formula to fit that outcome. But that method doesn't work. As a state, Nebraska is 49th in the nation in the percentage of its state budget that is allocated to K through 12 education. As a result, Nebraska is second in the nation in the percentage of revenue for public school districts that come from local property taxes. All Nebraska public school districts already adhere to state mandated levy limit lids as the general fund plus the building fund maximum levy can't exceed $1.05. Meanwhile, public education changes every year. Our teachers are doing more than ever before for their students and their communities. Costs in education, just like in every other walk of life, tend to increase some over time. Consider our student population is growing in number. There are children with higher needs. We have expanded programming. We are doing more than ever with accountability, after-school programs, summer programs, enrichment, and more. York is a great example. Our pre-K 12th enrollment grew from 1,232 in 2008-9 to 1,389 in 2015-16. That's 157 students, or more than 7 full classrooms at an average of 22 students per classroom. That's a 12.7% increase, 2.1% annually. Yet our spending increase during that same time, as mentioned, was just 1.8% per year. So the next time you hear someone blame public schools for higher property taxes, do some digging. Discover details about your school's district's revenue and spending. Those facts are audit certified each fall. The institutes, agencies, and elected officials that want you to see public schools harmed won't like what you discover, but that's okay. In the meantime, your public schools will continue to meet the needs of children in every Nebraska community, and that's no myth.
We'll move now to today's living and entertainment sections of the paper. For a long time after his wife died, Victor Hazan couldn't bear to read the notebooks that contained her final book. He would open a cover, look at her distinctive handwriting, and find it too painful to go on. Handwriting is a mirror of a person's soul, Victor said. It was a trauma for me. And then, about a year after Marcella died in 2013, Victor had dinner with a friend who asked about the notebooks. Victor remembered the large espresso he would bring Marcella as she wrote. He remembered how she labored in her final working days to finish the book. It meant something to her. He turned the cover and began working on Ingrediente, published this month by Scribner. I couldn't help bringing the book to life, said Victor, 88, for her. Ingrediente isn't so much a cookbook as it is a manual with evocative descriptions about choosing even commonplace ingredients with care. The section on sage describes its soft, furry gray-green leaves. It includes sweeping thoughts on how to use produce, but this isn't a collection of recipes with ingredients in one column and preparation instructions in the other. It is about buying the best possible meat, vegetables, and herbs and using them without fuss. The small white volume epitomizes Marcella's lifelong devotion to simplicity. Most of her recipes use only a handful of ingredients, a byproduct of growing up in Italy with limited means and cooking with as little as possible. She constantly stripped away the unnecessary to get to the essential, letting components speak for themselves. That's why the New York Times, in her obituary, wrote, "The impact Mrs. Hazan has had on the way America cooks Italian food is impossible to overstate. Even people who have never heard of Marcella Hazan cook and shop differently because of her and the 6 cookbooks she wrote, starting in 1973 with the classic Italian cookbook, The Art of Italian Cooking and the Italian Art of Eating. In the new book, Hazan describes having a relationship with her ingredients. I thought about them even when I wasn't shopping for them, she wrote. I thought about their fragrance, their color, their texture, their flavor. In the market, I loved to pick them up, which I would have not been permitted to do at all any produce stall in Italy. Inspect them, test them for firmness, admire their freshness, smell them. While writing about food was Marcella's life, it was Victor's life too. Throughout her long career, he deciphered her tight, round letters and translated them into English, ensuring that her precise instructions for everything from a 3-ingredient tomato sauce to a polenta shortcake could be followed by generations of cooks. Victor says Marcella was the genius. He just helped. But they did everything together, talked about ingredients, discussed flavors and combinations. Much of their 60 years of marriage revolved around the kitchen. Marcella and Victor were born in small villages near Ravenna, Italy. He moved to the United States before World War II, returning to Italy when he was 23. They met at a beach town near their homes, married in 1955, and moved to New York, where Victor worked for a family fur business. Marcella began teaching cooking in their apartment. She had one Italian cookbook and a few recipes her mother had sketched out. But what she lacked in formal culinary training, she made up for with her palate. She was precise, uncompromising, and impatient, but she liked to teach and to share. Opening the notebooks was a struggle for Victor because a huge piece of his life disappeared when she died. But as he summoned the courage to work, their life together returned to him, a parting gift few in his place receive. Those notebooks were very much alive. The handwriting was alive. The descriptions were alive. For well over a year, Marcella was alive to me, he said. This was a great privilege. Victor lived vicariously through his descriptions, through her descriptions, cooking her recipes, making dozens of decisions a cook faces in preparing a dish. Cooking, Victor points out, is not baking. It's not an absolute science. When, for example, is the right moment to turn off the heat when braising chicken? When is it the correct color of brown? He often wondered what she would have said. I would talk aloud to Marcella in the kitchen and say, this is as close as I could get to make it. But he kept at it during a sentimental and emotional year. He remembered watching her in the kitchen. He relived their days, one dish at a time.
This is the Ask Amy column with Amy Dickinson. Dear Amy, I have 2 sons and my sister-in-law has 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. Neither of my boys is interested in sports, but one niece and my nephew are involved in several sports. As a result, their grandparents go to many games and spend a great deal of time with that side of the family. Recently, the grandparents bought a new RV and invited my nieces and nephew to go camping with them. My children had no such offer. When my husband confronted his mother on this matter, she said he was just being jealous. But she still hasn't invited our children camping, nor have their grandparents had any contact with them in a month. My husband feels that we are being left out a lot. My in-laws' response is typically that it's just that they go to the games. Is that a valid reason to spend more time with part of the family over the other part of the family? Wouldn't taking the non-athletes camping be a great way to get that quality time since they pursue less popular activities? Signed, Feeling Hurt. Dear Feeling, on the one hand, sports are very time-consuming and can interfere with relationships. On the other, they give grandparents and others a fairly easy way to connect with the children in their lives by attending games. Assuming that your children are as accessible to these grandparents as the other set of grandchildren, your in-laws are in fact being patently unfair when excluding your children. If these grandparents feel they simply don't know your sons well enough, camping with them would be a great way to get to know them. Your husband has pointed out this imbalance and his parents have thrown it in his face. You two should do your best to promote a relationship between your children and these grandparents by inviting the older couple to spend time with your family. Also, I hope these cousins are close. One unfortunate sequence of obvious favoritism is that it interferes with other relationships. Many reader responses on this topic point out that children are very aware of favoritism, and the effects can permanently damage relationships as well as create bitter memories. You can acknowledge this favoritism to your boys, but you should not dwell on it. Dear Amy, I have been with my boyfriend, Tom, for more than 4 years. Tom and I have different faiths. We are very secure in our interfaith relationship. My brother Gary has made it abundantly clear that he does not support us. He cornered Tom at a family event to express his utter disdain for him and our relationship. This encounter was extremely upsetting. Gary apologized to me, but never to Tom, and with Tom's support, I managed to keep Gary in my life. We are not as close as we once were. Tom and I want to get married, but Gary has been a roadblock for me. Although Gary is in my life, I do not want him to attend our wedding. I am very nervous about how he would treat Tom and his family. Tom and I want to have a small ceremony where our families will be present. I just know Gary will be crushed to learn he's not invited. How can I tell my brother that I love him but do not want him to be part of this life event? If I could, I would prevent Gary from ever attending any family events where Tom and his family will be present, ready to move forward. Dear Reddy, if you definitely want to exclude your brother, you will have to be brave enough to tell him. Describe your decision as a consequence of his behavior. However, you could be frank, give him a chance to behave differently, and leave the final choice up to him. Tell him, Tom and I are getting married. We would like to include you, but you have made it clear that you don't support our union. If you can't be supportive and respectful toward us and our family, then you should definitely stay home.
Here's a story from Lincoln. The dog was dead. The police said so. The news said so. Charlie Cifarelli, 52, had seen the video himself. Though he moved to Nebraska in 1995, the native New Yorker still kept up with events in the Big Apple. So when he saw a story in August 2012 about a dog who had been shot in the face by New York police officers, he read it and he watched. In the video, which eventually went viral, a crowd gathers around a man lying on a sidewalk in Manhattan's East Village. A short brown and white dog stands watch. She barks and runs at a bystander. She barrels toward a police officer. The officer draws his gun. He shoots. The dog falls to her back and rolls. The people on the sidewalk begin to yell. The dog shakes her head, then lies still. Today, Star, the one-eyed New York pit bull, lives in Lincoln with her owners, Cifarelli and his fiancée, Jen Sanchez, 37. The pair operate an animal welfare organization, the STAR Project, STAR for Saving Those at Risk, dedicated to finding homes for dogs at high risk of being euthanized and dispelling stereotypes about so-called aggressive breeds. This August will be 4 years since the shooting. 4 years since Cifarelli began his journey to find the dog who would set his life on a new course. I saw that video of Star being shot and it rocked me, Cifarelli said. Days after the shooting, Cifarelli created a Facebook page for Star and her owner. When news leaked that Star was still alive, Cifarelli started making phone calls to New York Animal Control from his office at a Lincoln recycling company, inquiring about the dog's whereabouts. She was clinging to life, he heard. Star had been living with a homeless man on the streets of New York. On the day she was shot, her owner had suffered a seizure, and Star, standing nearby, was protecting him from the crowd and the police. She was shot just below her left eye. The bullet exploded, embedding fragments in the soft tissue of her face. Her homeless owner never reclaimed her and eventually left the country, Cifarelli said. Private donors and legal advocacy groups took care of her. Cifarelli traced her whereabouts to Pennsylvania, where she was recovering. He began calling shelters across the state. Do you have a one-eyed pit bull, he asked. Is her name Star? Is she brown? She had become somewhat of an internet celebrity by then, thanks in part to his efforts. When Cifarelli finally tracked her down at a shelter in Philadelphia, she was listed under another name. In December 2012, Cifarelli paid her a visit. He returned to Nebraska and told Sanchez that he could rest easy knowing the dog was safe. Not quite, Sanchez told him. He needed to give Star a home. In April 2013, Cifarelli brought his miracle dog back with him to Lincoln. Sanchez and Cifarelli described Star, who they believe to be an American Staffordshire mix, as a 60-pound cat. She's friendly, they said, and will greet visitors for a short while, but she quickly loses interest in people. Cifarelli thinks that comes from a past spent around panhandling. For the most part, she's healthy, though there are still the occasional reminders of the shooting. Every few months or so, a bullet fragment will work its way through Star's skin. She also takes medication for vision loss in her remaining eye, probably due to retinal degeneration she suffered from before the shooting. When asked what drew him to Star in the first place, Cifarelli mentions a rough upbringing in a rough city. New York, he said, is not Nebraska. He mentions his work history. He spent time in corrections, working around prisoners, and in the trash business, working around garbage. There's no gentleness in my life, he said. So maybe he and Star have that in common. But part of Sanchez and Cifarelli's mission with the Star Project is to prove that dogs like her, pit bulls and other so-called bully breeds, can in fact be gentle. They want to find homes for dogs less likely to be adopted because of their breed and save them from being euthanized in shelters. Bully breeds, said Pam Weiss, spokeswoman for the Nebraska Humane Society, typically spend more times in the shelter than other dogs. Most dogs are adopted an average of 2.9 days after they become available to the public. Bully breeds spend 6.1 days on average waiting for owners. Potential new owners might be discouraged from adopting them because of city ordinances regulating the pit bull breeds. In Omaha, for example, pit bulls must be either confined in a fenced area or muzzled and secured on a leash no longer than 6 feet, unless designated a breed ambassador. In both Lincoln and Omaha, individual dogs that have been dubbed dangerous or potentially dangerous must be registered with the city. We said reputation and skepticism about the dog's behavior could also play a role in their adoption rates. Sanchez invites those skeptical of pit bulls to meet Star. Cifarelli and Sanchez bring her to charity walks. They dress her in a purple tutu. They show her off to attendees. She loves kids, they said. On nice days, Star plays in a miniature dog park in Sanchez and Cifarelli's backyard. When she feels like entertaining visitors, she runs through a long blue tube and playfully paws an orange ball. Cifarelli and Sanchez have hung signs on the high fence surrounding the yard. A few invoke Star's roots. Ahead to New York, Yankee Stadium. Near the entrance to the yard, there's another sign, a quote from Mark Twain that Cifarelli says they've embraced since adopting Star. If you pick up a starving dog and make him prosperous, it begins, he will not bite you.
From John Roseman's parenting column, question, our son is a rising second grader at a private school. Last year, his behavior was often disruptive and sometimes even downright defiant. Problems his first grade teacher did not have with him. At home, we have no more than typical boyishness, nothing approaching serious. Nonetheless, at the school's request, we took him to a private counselor they recommended. When that did no good, the school began insisting he had a disorder and wanted him put on medication, something we will not do. Anyway, we want to take preventative steps to head this off before it becomes an issue in the coming school year. Can you give us any advice? John Roseman's answer, I heard variations on this story more times than I can count. A child, usually a boy, develops a classroom behavior problem. The school recommends counseling with a counselor with whom they have a working relationship. Despite the counseling, the child's behavior continues to be a problem and may even worsen, at which point the counselor and/or school claims the child has a behavior disorder and the school begins pushing for medication. First, there is no scientific validity to the notion that persistent misbehavior of one sort or another constitutes a disorder. That arises from so-called biochemical imbalance or some other equally improvable biological cause. Second, compelling evidence supporting the reliable efficacy of talk therapy with children does not exist. Third, many parents have told me that having their misbehaving children talk to counselors or therapists resulted in either no improvement or things getting considerably worse. Fourth, if your son had a disorder, it would not be confined to a specific teacher. Fifth, a behavior problem that is confined to a specific teacher is almost surely a teacher problem. Sixth, a school, whether private or public, is not likely to admit that. The unfortunate reality is that by the time a school working in conjunction with a child mental health counselor identifies a child as having an unverifiable behavior disorder and begins pushing for putting said child on medication, too much water has gone over the dam, so to speak. Sometimes, if the option of transferring the child to another school, giving him a fresh start is available, that has been my recommendation. Many behavior disorders have been cured by a longer morning ride to school. At this point, however, I want you to do nothing more than hold that thought. Since a new school year is imminent, I recommend you simply wait and see what effect a new teacher has on the situation. I would hope that under circumstances, the school would assign your son to a veteran teacher who is easygoing but also a seasoned classroom disciplinarian. Given that last year's problems were not typical of your son, I would predict that a new teacher will be all that is needed to get your son back on track. If, however, the problems persist, then I recommend what I term the nuclear option. That would involve taking away all privileges, including birthday parties and sleepovers, toys, electronics, and after-school activities, until your son's classroom behavior returns to first grade standards and remains steady for at least 4 weeks.
We're going to move now to the money and business and markets sections of the paper. CHI Health has entered a contract with United Healthcare to receive pay in a way different from the fee-for-service method that dominated healthcare for years. CHI Health and its Uninet contracting program will engage in an accountable care arrangement with United. Generally, the organization receives incentives providing care within a budget to groups of patients while meeting quality goals. This strategy is becoming increasingly prevalent nationwide with Medicare and private insurers such as United. This is change in healthcare that's probably long overdue, said CHI Health CEO Cliff Robertson. And I know it's just the right thing. The contract kicked in at the beginning of July. About 750 employed CHI physicians and 450 independent doctors with contracts under Uninet are involved. Most United Healthcare members who see those doctors will be involved. United members on individual health plans will not be. Patients who have diabetes, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, chronic lung disease, and other chronic illnesses are the primary targets. Health coaches or care coordinators will attempt to stay in touch with those patients and make sure they are seeing their doctors and taking their medications correctly. The coordinators will strive to keep those patients out of emergency rooms and make sure they aren't unnecessarily readmitted to the hospital. The contract affects CHI patients covered by United in Nebraska and Southwest Iowa. The Uninet president, Ann Olson, said quality measures include keeping diabetes in check, preventing readmissions to the hospital, and making sure patients get in for preventative screenings at the right time. CHI has somewhat similar contracts with Medicare and Aetna Coventry. The United contract is for about 3 years. United says it has 750 accountable care programs across the nation.
The market today has been pretty much the same way it's been all week, kind of an up and down day. As of right now, the Dow is down 26.43 at 18,429. The Nasdaq is down almost 10 points at 5164. The S&P 500 is up slightly at about 3 points. From Omaha, Cabela's Incorporated reported a 6% decline in its second quarter profit Thursday, but didn't offer any new clues about its long-term strategic plan. The Sydney-based company reported net income of $37.8 million or 55 cents per share. That's down from last year's $40.1 million or 56 cents per share. But this year's results were weighed down by restructuring charges of $950 million as Cabela works to reduce expenses. Excluding those, the outdoor gear seller would have reported earnings per share of 59 cents. The 10 analysts surveyed by Zacks Investment Research expected earnings of 61 cents per share on average. Cabela's is in the midst of a strategic review that began in December after an activist investor began urging it to consider selling all or part of the company. The retailer said Thursday that review is ongoing, so officials won't comment on it. Activist investment firm Elliott Management began pushing for significant changes at Cabela's last October. Elliott owns 7.4% of Cabela's shares and holds options to buy another 3.8%. Cabela's decisions are being watched closely in its hometown of Sydney. The company employs about 2,000 people in the western Nebraska town of about 7,000. Cabela's CEO, Tommy Milner, said the company is successfully limiting expenses, so he reiterated Cabela's outlook for high single-digit or low double-digit growth for the company's full-year earnings per share. Stifel analyst Jim Duffy said Cabela's reported shrinking profit margins in the quarter as it offered more discounts to boost sales. That's not sustainable, but Duffy said Cabela's cost-cutting in this quarter helped to offset smaller profit margin. Cabela's posted revenue of $929.9 million in the period, up 11.2% year over year, and topping street forecasts. Seven analysts surveyed by Zacks expected $911.5 million. In morning trading, Cabela's shares fell 4.3%, or $2.32 a share, to $51.51.
Moving now to sports. Nebraska will conduct a moment of silence and air a video tribute to honor Sam Foltz during its annual Husker Football Fan Day on August 3rd. The event gives fans an opportunity to meet players and coaches before the start of fall camp. The Huskers will open preseason practice at 3:30 p.m. on August 4th, and Mike Riley will conduct a press conference August 3rd at 1:30 p.m. This year's Fan Day will expand 30 minutes to a full 2 hours from 6 to 8 p.m. in Memorial Stadium. Gates will open at 6 p.m. and fans can enter through gates 3, 11, 15, and 24. Players and coaches will be seated at various locations on the field. Defensive position groups will be primarily located on the west sideline. Wideouts, offensive linemen, and specialists will be on the east sideline. Quarterbacks and running backs will be in the north end zone. True freshmen will be located in the stands on the west side of the stadium. Assistant coaches will be found with their respective position groups. Fans are asked to limit their autograph requests to one item per player or coach. Nate Rohr will become the game day public address voice for Husker football at Memorial Stadium. Rohr replaces Lane Grindle, who is now part of the Milwaukee Brewers radio network. Rohr has served as the play-by-play voice of Husker softball for the past 12 seasons. He has also previously served as the public address announcer for Nebraska soccer and swimming. The college football playoff has abandoned a plan to play most of its semifinals on New Year's Eve after television ratings tumbled last year, moving the dates of future games to ensure they will be played either on a weekend or a holiday. The changes will start with the 2018 season. The TV ratings for last year's semifinal games played on Thursday, December 31st, dropped 36% from the semifinals played the season before on New Year's Day. This season's semifinals are still set for Saturday, December 31st. Next season's playoff is scheduled to be back on January 1st. In 2018, the games initially scheduled to be played on New Year's Eve will now be played Saturday, December 29th.
Well, we're going to stay with that article. The college football playoff has abandoned a plan to play most of its semifinals on New Year's Eve after television ratings tumbled last year, moving the dates of future games to ensure they will be played either on a weekend or a holiday. The changes will start with the 2018 season. The TV ratings for last year's semifinal games played on Thursday, December 31, and dropped 36% from the semifinals played the season before on New Year's Day. This season's semifinals are still set for Saturday, December 31. Next season's playoff is scheduled back on January 1. In 2018, the games initially scheduled to be played on New Year's Eve will now be played Saturday, December 29. The 2019 games will move to Saturday, December 28. We've had a healthy discussion with a lot of people who love college football, and we concluded that making these changes would be the right thing to do for our fans, College Football Playoff Executive Director Bill Hancock said in a statement. In a phone interview with the AP, Hancock said after looking at data provided by ESPN that considered all the factors that contributed to the drop in ratings, such as the lopsided scores and participating teams, it was clear the single greatest factor was when the games were played. Hancock said several options for altering the schedule were discussed, including giving the college football playoff a permanent home on New Year's Day, but that didn't get far. It was clear from the get-go that our group wanted to honor the traditions of the game, including the Rose Bowl, including the Sugar Bowl, getting back to New Year's Day, which they really cherish. Hancock said. That one didn't stay on the table for long. Big Ten Commissioner Jim Delaney, whose conference is partners with the Rose Bowl along with the Pac-12, said earlier this week the Rose Bowl would not be giving up its traditional New Year's Day afternoon time slot. The Big 12 and Southeastern Conference now have a similar partnership with the Sugar Bowl and have locked up the time slot after the Rose Bowl. Hancock said it was important to keep the semifinals in what he called the holiday period between Christmas and New Year's Day because it best allows fans to travel to the games. ESPN's Burke Magnus, Executive Vice President, Programming and Scheduling, said the network, which is paying about $470 million annually for the media rights to college football playoff, was pleased with the decision. They did engage in a really thoughtful analysis of what could make the CFP more fan-friendly, and ultimately they got to the right place, which we're happy about, Magnus said. Magnus said ESPN was not directly involved in the decision, nor did it exert any pressure on the CFP to change its schedule. He said there was also no pressure from advertisers. No, it never went anywhere near that kind of conversation, Magnus said in a phone interview. There was never any ultimatum issued. The first college football playoff set ratings record for ESPN on New Year's Day 2015. The semifinal between Oregon and Florida State was played at the Rose Bowl, and Alabama and Ohio State played at the Sugar Bowl, with the Rose Bowl kicking off at about 4:20 p.m. The semifinals moved to New Year's Eve last season for the first of 8 initially scheduled times throughout the 12-year contract the CFP has with ESPN. College football officials said they were going to start a new tradition on New Year's Eve and that people would incorporate watching big games into their party plans. The initial returns showed that was not happening. Not only did the games have to compete with parties at night, but much of the country was still working when the Orange Bowl between Clemson and Oklahoma kicked off at around 3:30. We tried to do something special with New Year's Eve, even when it fell on a weekday, Hancock said. But after studying this to see if it worked, we think we can do better. These adjustments will allow more people to experience the game they've enjoyed so much. For these 4 years, our previous call is reversed.
From Miami, Dee Gordon walked into the Miami Marlins clubhouse 4 hours before game time and was greeted at his locker by a 3-foot-high stack of boxes, bats, gloves, shoes, and more, all new. 3 months of stuff, he said. That's how long he had been gone. Gordon returned Thursday from an 80-game suspension for a positive drug test. He batted leadoff, going 0 for 4 against the St. Louis Cardinals and playing second base. In conjunction with his reinstatement, Gordon issued an apology on social media addressed primarily to his young fans. I know I let you down, and I'm sorry, Gordon said in a video. Complacency led me to this, and I'm hurt. I urge you guys to be more responsible than I am about what goes into your body. I wouldn't wish this on anyone. Gordon was suspended in April after testing positive for 2 performance-enhancing drugs. In his video, Gordon said he learned from his mistake. I thought being the smallest guy, I would never fail a drug test, he said. I didn't pay attention at all, and I didn't meet the standards. That's my fault and no one else's, but don't give up on me. When 2015's batting and stolen base leader in the NL was suspended, he said he unknowingly took the banned substances. Speaking to a cluster of media in the dugout before batting practice Thursday, he declined to elaborate. What lesson did he learn? Don't be complacent just because you're small, he said. I got complacent and made a mistake. Even without the 5'11", 170-pound Gordon, The Marlins remained in contention for their first playoff berth since 2003. I kept in touch with my teammates pretty much on a daily basis, Gordon said. I told them thank you for keeping their end of the bargain. I asked them to keep it close until I got back, and that's exactly what they did. Now I've got to keep my end of the bargain. I've got to help us get to the playoffs. As part of his punishment, Gordon will be ineligible for the postseason.
In NFL news, the Detroit Lions made a series of moves in the wake of Calvin Johnson's retirement, signing one of the best receivers available at the start of free agency and another one a day before their first practice. Detroit added depth to a position led by Golden Tate and depleted by Johnson's departure by signing Anquan Boldin on Thursday, just before opening training camp. The Lions signed Marvin Jones to a 5-year contract days after Johnson left the league, and Lions in March. Bolden, looking to extend his career, is coming off a solid season with the 49ers. He ranks among the NFL's top 20 with 1,009 catches and 13,195 yards receiving. He scored 75 touchdowns and started 182 games with Arizona, Baltimore, and San Francisco over his 13-year career. The 35-year-old Bolden started 13 games last season with the 49ers, making 69 catches for 789 yards with an average 84 receptions the previous 2 seasons. Minnesota Vikings gave coach Mike Zimmer a contract extension as he opens his third training camps with the team. General manager Rick Spielman declined to disclose the terms of the deal when the Vikings reported Thursday to Minnesota State University, but Zimmer's original contract was not close to expiring. Spielman said the Vikings were eager to build on the buzz that's surrounding the organization this summer with the opening of U.S. Bank Stadium and the return of a team that went 11-5 in the regular season and won the NFC North in Zimmer's second year on the sideline. Items belonging to Ken Stabler are being auctioned online, even as the former Raiders quarterback is set to be posthumously inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Pristine Auction has listed a total of 458 items, including the Hickok belt for the Professional Athlete of the Year and Stabler's varsity letter from the University of Alabama. Jacksonville running back Denard Robinson insists he wasn't under the influence of drugs or alcohol when he fell asleep behind the wheel of his car and rolled through a red light and into a retention pond this month. Robinson was cited for careless driving a week after the July 3 incident, and the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office launched an internal investigation into the actions of officers who responded to the scene who did not test Robinson for drugs or alcohol. The NFL says the November 21 Monday night game in Mexico City between the Oakland Raiders and the Houston Texans sold out within minutes. A league statement says tickets went on sale at 11 a.m. Thursday and were gone in less than a half hour. Mexico is one of the few countries outside of the United States with a large fan base for the sport that folks there call American football. League officials have said it's their biggest foreign market. The New York Jets made the re-signing of quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick official, announcing the move less than 10 minutes before the start of the team's first practice of training camp.
Horseman's Park is turning to Hannah Houston to help sing the praises of its 2-day live meet. Houston, who gained national fame after finishing third on NBC's The Voice, will perform the national anthem at about 5:45 p.m. Friday. She also will sing God Bless America before the second race. Houston's appearance will be part of the 2-day meet, which follows the 3-day live meet in May. First post time for Friday's 5-race card is 6:30 p.m., while first post for Saturday's 7-race card is 4 p.m. There will be a $5 admission charge, with that revenue going directly into funding for live racing. That fee will be charged starting at 3:30 p.m. Friday and 1:30 p.m. Saturday. A free program comes with each paid admission, and kids 17 and under get in free when accompanied by an adult. Unlike past years when late July racing led to 100-plus temperatures, conditions appear to be ideal this weekend. The high temperature is expected to be in the mid-80s both days and even cooler with the later post times. Friday's card will be highlighted by the $20,000 Nebraska Queen Stakes and $20,000 Dazzling Falls Stakes. Saturday's card is topped by the $20,000 Princess Stakes and $20,000 Rome zipper stakes. Well, it's noon, and we've had a great 2 hours with you, and this is Beverly Leidig. Be back with you again next Friday.
And this is Bob Gotting. It's been a pleasure reading for you today. Sounds like it's going to be a beautiful weekend. Enjoy it, and we will talk to you next week.
And thank you very much, Beverly Leidig and Bob.